Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Today we're continuing our Solo Guitars ES style kit build. This thing is, it's awesome. I'm looking forward to getting it done. We're working on the neck today. We're working on the fretwork. And in today's video in particular, we're going to be doing a tool shootout, if you will, comparing 3 different fret leveling beams. So in the last video of this nature, we compared the not straight edges. This time, we're going to take a look at 3 different beams. We're going to be talking about a few different elements of them, everything except price. So just like last time, I encourage you to check out the websites if you want to, check the price on them. We've got Skyscraper Guitars, Crimson Guitars, and Solo Guitars. Those are going to be the 3 that we're taking a look at. One thing to note, even though I am not getting into the price aspect of them, they are all located in different places. So shipping may be, a deciding factor for you. Crimson Guitars is located in the UK. Skyscraper Guitars is located in the United States, and Solo Music Gear is based out of Canada. I believe they all ship internationally, so if you've got a preference, go for it. But yeah, the shipping can have an impact on the cost for sure. Let's get to it. Let me start by saying that all of these are high quality tools. They all get the job done well. Yeah, they all work just fine. But there are a couple elements that make them interesting. And just a caveat off the start here, so that we're doing the apples to apples thing. I have a shorter Skyscraper Guitars beam. They do have a longer one. You should get the longer one. I have the shorter one because this is the one that I take with me when I'm going places. It stays in my guitar setup and fretwork travel kit. But yeah, let's start with this one. So first of all, it's beautiful. Nice orange anodized look. I've got my strips of sandpaper already on either side of it, but the whole thing is that color, including the top and bottom edge. It's got a nice rounded edge to it. The rounded corners are good. They reduce the surface area, the width a little bit, but that's fine because your fretboard is curved. So because your fretboard's curved, you're not going to contact the wide area all at once anyway, so that really doesn't matter. There's definitely enough width here to do the job and to do it well. The rounding is nice because it doesn't gouge. You don't have to worry about nicking into your frets a little bit if your pressure isn't perfect. I appreciate that. I think the rounding is a nice element. It's very light. Okay, so this aluminum piece is not particularly heavy. You are going to need to put a little bit of pressure if you want to do the work quickly, or you can just glide it along very gently. That's fine too. It depends on how much you want to take off. Skyscraper. Next up, we have Crimson. Crimson's got, they're all machined very nicely, very flat. Crimson has the flat edge, top and bottom, of course, and then it's got this interesting finish that they've got on most of their tools. That's the black with kind of the red spatter. It's got a little bit of texture, which is actually kind of nice, gives it a little grip. What can I tell you about this one? It's also very light. This is the full length, so that's nice. But again, Skyscraper, they have that. I just have the shorter one. This one has hard edges, hard corners. So I don't love the hard corners. I don't mind them. The chances of you actually gouging into your frets are very, very slim, particularly since these are aluminum. So they're not really hard enough to do that anyway, but I prefer to have a little bit of round on mine personally. All in all, a great tool, a little wider, works well. And finally, we have the Solo Guitars leveling beam. This aesthetically is just a beam. So nothing special there. It doesn't have a beautiful finisher on it or anything. That may or may not impact the price. Again, we're not really getting into that. The corners on this one are rounded, so they're not as widely rounded as the Skyscraper one, but that obviously doesn't matter. You've got a wider surface area here, so that's kind of nice. And this one's heavier. So I appreciate that personally. I like just letting it sit on there and moving it back and forth and not having to worry about applying pressure, because then I don't have to worry about applying pressure unevenly. This thing will just sit on there and the weight of it is enough to kind of get the job done. So I do enjoy that. One thing that I'll say, and I missed it before, in favor of the Crimson one, I really appreciate that they've got a hole there so you can hang it up. That's something that I would like to see in the Solo one and in the Skyscraper one, but you can always drill a hole. So if it really mattered to me, I would just do that. I'll go a little bit off topic here and note that the width of this area doesn't matter all that much for crowning, for the reason that I said your fretboard is radiused, and having the corners rounded Doesn't matter all that much for crowning for the reason that I said. The frets are harder than the beam typically. It's the sandpaper that gets the job done. But where this stuff does come into play is if you start using your fret leveling beam for other purposes. So for example, you can use fret leveling beam to level a finish, and you'll level it perfectly because it's flat and level. It's a very long process, but some people do it. It works really well. You can get a mirror finish doing that. And at that point, some of this stuff does come into play. So when you're doing that, you want a wider area so that you're not worried about, taking small spots and creating waves. You want the wider section, which you have with the Crimson and with the solo version. When you're doing that, it also starts to matter more whether you have rounding, because then you do have an opportunity to gouge into your finish, which is obviously going to be softer than your beam. So for that, my winner is solo. Also, because this one doesn't have that finish on it, you can use the wide side if you want for that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a little bit of added versatility. Let's go ahead and do a demo of these. Again, I'll note they're all in different countries. They all ship internationally as far as I know. If you do decide on the solo music gear, and I'm not telling you to, but if you do decide on that one, I do have an affiliate link in the description. So if you don't mind using that, it helps me out. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and I appreciate it. But of course, all of these will work quite well. So let's get them set up. We're going to use the old masking tape and super glue trick to attach our paper to the solo and Crimson beams. The Skyscraper one came with a couple strips of adhesive back paper when I got it. Eventually, you have to replace that. Came with a couple of two different kinds, or two different grits. So yeah, I'm not going to bother attaching anything to that, obviously. We'll get the other ones geared up and get to work. So we're going to start off here by getting the sandpaper attached to the other two beams. There are a few different ways to do this, but generally speaking, I like to put a piece of masking tape on there to protect them and then glue the sandpaper on. You can also use a piece of double-sided tape to do this. Some double-sided tapes are good, some not so much. The good ones are a little harder to come by. I think Texas Toast Guitars did a video on some apparently good double-sided tape. I'm using the super glue and masking tape trick that you'll see Crimson Guitars use every now and then. That's where I got the idea from. It's kind of an oldie but a goodie, if you will. It works very well, and I'm using Star Bond glue. You can check out the link in the description for that if you want a discount. I think we get 20% off of that. Awesome stuff. Lots of great super glue products there. Another option is to just go and get yourself some 3M spray adhesive or something similar. There are some art adhesives that come in aerosols as well, but I prefer the 3M. It's a little stronger, so I use that sometimes as well. I'll just cut my strips of sandpaper, spray the back of them, and then stick them on. The only problem is you really don't have much in the way of open time with that stuff, so you don't with super glue either. Either way, you kind of got to get it right the first time. But yeah, I'm just using the super glue here, running a very thin line. I spray a little bit of the Star Bond accelerator onto the strips of sandpaper, and then make sure you line them up if you're doing it this way. See, I need 2 of these for each beam because the beam is pretty long, so you have to make sure that it's lined up correctly. If you overlap the 2 pieces of sandpaper, you don't have a flat beam anymore. You've got a problem, so don't do that. It's actually better to leave a gap, if anything, but it's not difficult to get them lined up. It doesn't take long, and there we go. I can just trim the ends off, and we're good. Now, I always use a Sharpie to mark the frets first. Not everybody does. There are some people out there who are very experienced and think that they can just look at the scratches on the frets as they sand to make sure that everything's level, and they probably can, in fairness, but I've always done it this way, and I continue to do it this way because I find that having a bit of Sharpie there to tell me if there's a low spot is helpful. Then I don't have to worry about missing anything, and I don't have to examine the frets ridiculously closely. So moving on to the actual leveling here, I've already kind of given you guys the comparison between the beams. It's often a good idea to have 2 different grits of sandpaper on there, so I'll put like a 180 on one side, and I'll start with that, especially if I feel like there's a fair bit of leveling that needs to happen. And then I'll put something like a 400 on the other side and finish off, get the last little bit off with that so I don't have such deep scratches to contend with at the end. I've explained what I like about each of these beams. I will be doing a video at some point coming up because I've had some questions about this on why a beam like a flat beam like this makes more sense than a radius beam, why you probably shouldn't use a radius beam before the leveling work, and how you can actually get a proper radius with a flat beam. So I'll kind of explain how that works. It might get a touch theoretical, but oh well. In terms of the actual comparison between these, I do appreciate having that slightly wider flat surface, but again, having the rounds on the edge has some merit to it, and you can use it for a few things where, you know, a hard edge might cause some gouging. Like I said, I like the weight of these solo beams because I can just let the beam do the work and I don't actually have to press down. I don't have to worry about pressing down unevenly, but that's not a huge factor. You can definitely just apply a little bit of pressure with the lighter beams and they work great. It is also possible to make your own beam in some circumstances, or to use a block, as long as you're using one that's machined perfectly flat and that you don't have to worry about bending. I've seen people do it with a level. I've done it. I prefer using an actual beam, but there are some options out there. Alright guys, so that concludes our video on fret leveling beams and our comparison. I hope it helps you out if you're planning on picking one up to do your own fretwork. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. It really helps me out. And remember to subscribe so you can see the rest of this kit build and our other tool shootouts, among other things. So, as always, hope you liked it. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.